Okay, welcome back. So now I'm gonna go through the first what would Python do question for iterators and generators from last week's worksheet. I highly encourage you guys to just skim through this, I guess, text on iterators and generators. For the question, what you specifically need to know is these three functions right here. Oh, sorry. These three functions right here, map, filter, and reduce, because they're just gonna show up in the question at the end. So let's just jump in. We have a generator called foo, and within it we see that it instantiates a variable a that is set to a value of 0. And then within it, it's going to have an if condition. Now, something to note is that this if condition is always going to execute, right? Because a is set to 0, and then the condition is that if a is 0, then all this stuff is going to get printed, yielded. So basically, this if condition is always fulfilled. All right. So first things, we have a foo call. So if we remember from the mini lecture, when we directly just call the generator name itself, basically what Python is going to do is spit back generator object, right? Because this is, you're basically just calling the generator object again itself. Yeah, so that's going to be the result of that line. And then we have foo gen, which is set to our generator function foo, and then the next function call on it. So we're going to go into our foo generator function, right? Because we just call next, and then see that a equals 0, and then go into the if condition, and then print hello, and then yield a. So again, with yield, you're basically going to pause, right? You're going to pause before you output the value, and you're only going to output the value a once you call next, right? So we're first gonna output hello, and then we're gonna yield and then output the value a, which is 0, and then we're gonna stop there. And you might be wondering, why aren't we like going on and printing world? And that's because basically yield, you have to remember, yield is going to be a pause. We're going to pause before going onwards until we call the next function again. And coincidentally, the next line, we see that next is called. So we're going to go ahead and print world. And then we see inside this generator function, nothing else is going to get yielded because a is set to 0, and this if condition is only run if a is 0. So nothing else, basically our generator function is done. So we're going to write stop iteration because, yeah, basically our generator function is stopped. Okay. Next, we have a for loop as iterating through our generator foo. So this is interesting, right? Because it's going to print I, but technically there's only one, our for loop is only going to loop through once, right? Because our given value a is static. It's only 0, and it's not going to like change at all. So if we print I in this line here, it's basically just going to go through this our foo generator and print out yield a, and then print out world, and then it's just going to stop after that. So the outputs are going to be hello, 0, and world. And this is only going to be outputted once, right? Because our a value does not change. All right. Next we have this massive function. And if a problem like this, if you ever get like this line on a midterm or final, the strategy is just to work from the inside and then go out. So first, we see that we have a map function that's called on a lambda function called on a range 10. So, well, if you recall, range is basically going to just be 0, 1, and all the way to 9. And then this lambda function x is just gonna basically decrement whatever value x is, and then map. So what map is gonna do is gonna apply this lambda function on every single value we have in our range 10. So basically it's just gonna decrement every single value 0, 1 to 9 by 1. So the result of this part is gonna be -1, 0, all the way to 8, because every single value is just gonna be decreased by 1. Okay, now we have filter, which is called on a new lambda function, and the result of this stuff here, right? So what is filter? Filter is going to keep, it's only going to keep the values that return true from this lambda function. And you might be wondering, okay, well, if we apply like mod 2 on the values -1 to 8, how do you know which ones are true? And this is where the idea of truthy and falsy values comes in, right? If you recall, 0 is a falsy number, right? And any other like digit is going to be truthy. So this filter function is only going to keep the values where the result of calling mod 2 on our numbers is going to be not 0, right? So if we call lambda x mod 2 on -1 to 8, it's basically just going to keep the odd numbers, right? So the result of this entire filter expression is going to be -1, 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so now we know what A is set to. A is set to this iterator, or sorry, iterable with values -1, 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? And then when we call next A, we're just basically just taking the first element of A, which is -1. Okay. Now we have reduce and a new lambda function and our A value, or our A iterator again. So here A is going to be 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? Because we already called next A and yielded that first element from A. And then we have lambda and then reduce. So I think with reduce, it's best to just like see it in action. So if we go back to the top here, if we have a reduce function, right, and function add and then a list containing 1, 2, 3, basically it's just gonna apply add on all 3 elements of this list, and we're gonna especially just gonna add all these together, and so that's why the output is 6. And basically the same thing is happening here, where this lambda function is technically like add. You know, just think of this like as add, right? Because it's adding x plus y together. So when we call reduce, it's just gonna add all our remaining values in A, which is 1, 3, 5, 7, and output the sum of that, which is going to be 16. So the output of this line right here is going to be 16. Okay, so that was the what would Python do question. And again, if you guys have any questions on any like of this, feel free to shoot me an email, or you can ask me during our CSM section this Friday. So